Welcome to Recovery Unfiltered. I'm Larry. I'm an alcoholic.
I am Rob. I am also an alcoholic. We are not professionals. There are no letters after our names. We know very little. However, you will hear the word God and a four-letter word in the same sentence. You will also be offended. So if you are easily offended, just pass us by. This podcast is not for you.
Our opinions are just that. If you don't agree with what we're saying, that's okay. We're going to love you anyways. We are not in any way affiliated with AA.
So sit back, grab a beverage of your choice, and get ready.
Let's go. Hello, Rob.
Hello, Larry.
Can you believe we're actually here?
First time.
Can you believe it was May 20th I called you?
Really?
Yes, sir. May 20th I called you and asked you, would you want to be a part of a podcast with me?
And the impetus of the podcast was what?
You know, you keep telling me, because I've said this story a few times, that I had a vision. And I didn't know, I don't have any other way to talk about it. I've had dreams, I've had a lot of things, but this thing was a vision. About May 17th, I had a very, very close friend of mine. His son passed away, and it was a really rough time, and he was very close to the family. The whole family was very close. And it was hard, and I went out and visited, and the dad was struggling, trying to figure out why, blaming himself. And I was really trying to comfort, trying to use, everything I had and trying to, talk to him and help him through it. But with somebody that doesn't really understand addiction and somebody that just doesn't know what we know and been through everything that we've been through, it's hard to explain that. And the more I talked to him, the more angry I got. And I felt myself getting angry. Even my wife had to tell me, you got to stop being so angry.
What were you angry about?
That he
just because you couldn't get the point across to him?
Right. That's what was so frustrating, right? I was trying to use different words. I was trying to use this way, and I was trying to use different. And then I was trying to play hard and tough, and it's just, I couldn't get it across. And, and I had to back off. I really did. So that happened on May 17th, and May 19th, I flew out to Texas. I had a meeting there, and I woke up. I had an early morning meeting in Texas, but I woke up at 5:30 there, which is 3:30 here. So I was obviously still a little sleepy, and I was kind of going in and out, and I'd fallen back to sleep, and I had this I don't know. You keep telling me to call it a vision because that's what it is.
I mean, the reason you don't want to call it that because it gives a kind of a weird connotation. People think, oh, this guy's nuts.
Right.
People have them. A dream, we remember touches of it.
No.
And then they go away. What you had was a vision. Let's just call it what it is.
And I felt it. I felt it. I was inside of a stadium. Not so much a stadium as much as it
was an exact place in Stockton.
It was an exact place inside of Stockton. I've been into it multiple times, and it was a table down in the middle, and it's bleachers all up around us, and there was a round table of 4 people sitting there, and there was me, and honestly, I don't know who the other 3 people were. I don't. And I remember sitting in that, and we were taking questions from the audience about addiction and the families afterwards and what it was like leading up to it. And all these questions were just coming in. And I remember waking up out of that, sitting on the edge of my bed going, what the hell was that? Because it was so real. I felt like I was still sitting there. And I think, wow. So I got up and I got dressed and I got ready for my meeting. And all the way to the meeting, I was just still.
So I got to start a podcast. Where did that
and so I didn't really right away, but I was just trying to gather all that. And then it dawned on me, I got to start a podcast. I need to talk to more people about this. I don't feel like I'm getting anywhere. I need to do something, right? I need to do something. And then God just laying that so heavy on me. And I prayed about it. I said, God, if this is what you want me to do, I'm yours. Lay me open. I'm here. And I try to push it aside. Because I have a very selfish tendency because if I get something in my brain, right, I'm going to do it. I don't care who gets in my way.
I've heard your step work, baby. I know.
I don't give a shit who's in my way. If I'm going to do it, I'm going to fucking do it. I'm going to do it with a full throttle. And so I had to step back. And finally about noon, that's when I called you and I said, hey, Rob, I got to talk to you about something. And I explained to you what had happened. I said, would you start a podcast with me? What'd you say?
Sure, let's go.
Yeah, you had zero hesitation. And I kind of told you what was happening. And I said, okay, when I get back, because I was going to be there for a week, I said, when we get back, well, let's sit down and we'll talk about it a little bit. And when I got back, Yeah, I mean, we were 100% on board, and I said, I'm going to let God lead me on this, and I just kept just being very, very cautious about my steps and how I was going about, I want to make sure Katie was okay with it, my family's okay with it, because this, it's a commitment to do this. It's a commitment for me, and it's a commitment for you.
Right.
I mean, it's a financial commitment, but it's something so I was very cautious about what I was doing. And the next step was, okay, let me start researching some podcast equipment to see. I didn't have a clue what I was doing.
We still don't.
I still don't. I mean,
You've made some steps.
I hope that this thing, as we go along, gets better and better, right?
It will.
And so I started doing some research, and I found different things, and I started getting on Facebook Marketplace, and I found some equipment, and it was these mics and these arms and this Rodecaster mixer, and it was a whole setup, and I mean, basically just a plug and play, and about $2,000 worth of equipment I was able to get for $700, and I'm like, okay. And I called the guy, said, well, I got to go to LA, and if it's still there when I get back, I'll come pick it up. Lo and behold, it was.
And we were praying about this all along the way.
Absolutely.
Because if God's not involved, there's no point.
Right. And so when I got back, it was still there, and I went, picked it up, brought it in, and the next thing is you and I came in and started doing some mic checks and started working through it, and
lo and behold, your neighbor 5 houses down.
I was just getting ready to talk about that. So when I was looking for copyright,
so I call these God shots, because that's what they are.
Right. Lo and behold, I was looking for some copyright, like lead-in songs and that kind of stuff, copyright-free lead-in songs and this and that. And I was starting to think of some people, and I remember a guy that I grew up with. He played in a band, and he taught my daughter how to play guitar. And I was like, let me see if I can get a hold of Keith and see if he could, still involve with his band or something and get me, put something together. And as I was trying to get a hold of Keith, it dawned on me. I'm like, holy crap. Right down here. He's, and so I texted him real fast. I go, hey, what about, and he goes, Larry, come down to my house. So I went down there, and he has it all set up. He has everything. He's been doing it for a while.
His own podcast. Quite the opposite of what we're doing.
100% different than what we're doing. We got to get them
down here, get some drunks down here. And
right.
Have a good old time.
So I was like, okay. So we sat there, and I'm just like, and it just, in fact, when he told me that he had it, it gave me goosebumps. I'm like, holy shit, this is it's getting more and more real, right? Mm-hmm. So he told me how to, the social media side and this kind of stuff. He really helped me out, and I very much appreciated what he did for me. And it kind of pushed me into another level. And then it just kept snowballing. Then I put it on the back burner. I was like, all right, I'm going to sit on this for a little bit longer, right? I just want to know if this is truly what's for us, the right way to go.
And the only way to find that out is to start.
Right. So I finally
put our motives out.
Right.
We already got guests lined up. I mean, some powerful stuff coming up. Real.
Right. So I ended up being on another podcast. I got invited onto another podcast to talk about it. And when I did that one, I was like, okay, yes. Well, I'm going after this one 100%. I enjoyed being on there. I enjoyed that platform. I enjoy that speaking. I teach I go into the jails. I love speaking. And you guys always say I love speaking because they can't run away.
They can't run away. Captive audience. Poor bastards.
And I love hearing myself talk. So, I mean, that's just where it's at. And so, yeah, this is the beginning of it. And this is what we're going to do. So that's kind of how the podcast came along. And not only is Rob a very close friend of mine, he's also the man that walked me through my steps when I first got sober. He is my sponsor. He is one of my many sponsors because I'm a very difficult subject. I needed multiple, right?
Oh, yeah. One for each day. Hard-headed son of a bitch.
Well, so yeah, that's how the podcast got going. And basically where we want to go with this podcast is we want to keep the lighter side of this sobriety. We want to educate, right? We want to tell people about this thing that we call alcoholism. And it's not just, we're not going to focus just on the alcoholic. We want to focus on what it was like to live with an alcoholic. We got guests coming in that were wives and daughters and sisters and brothers. And we got different people coming in to talk about what it was like living with that alcoholic before and what it's like now.
And what it's like to go through sobriety, having buried a child in your addiction. And then we have people that just recently buried their son at 7 years old.
Right.
Sober, early sobriety.
Right.
What was that like? I mean,
right.
because our goal is to glorify God.
Right. 100%.
Help others.
Right.
One or two, it doesn't matter how many. If we help one,
Right.
And this is just another medium to reach more people or other people.
And the thing about it is, this is a 12-step for me, right?
Absolutely.
For me and
carry
you.
the message,
right? We're carrying the message, and this is how I feel comfortable doing it. I've never been comfortable sponsoring one-on-one. He's
a terrible sponsor, so it's good for him. That's why he goes into jails and institutions. They can't run away because, believe me, they would. He's had a couple sponsees, and guess what? They went back to drinking.
They ran away.
Ran away. But again, I've always said that, and I believe this. I said it last night at the meeting. We went to another meeting, me and Byron did, and I firmly believe when you come into AA or wherever you go, when you have a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, wherever you come from, you are given a gift. Maybe more than one. I believe I've been given more than one. And when you exercise that, like yours, you go into hospitals, institutions.
Right.
God has blessed me with being a sponsor many times, and he continually. There's always someone in the chair. There's never an empty chair in front of Rob.
Nope.
That's my gift. And when you exercise your gift to glorify God and to benefit others, that's what we've been chasing. That's the hole I've been trying to fill in my life with everything else up until the point where I finally got it.
Right.
And that's why I do it. I'm not going to drink tomorrow. Alcohol was not my problem.
Right.
I was.
You're right. Yeah. And, and those, we all have different gifts. And my gift is I love to talk. I can sit here and talk for an hour by myself at that wall, right? It's always better to have a captive audience. But for me, I love to listen to the sound of my own voice. So I'll just keep talking. As long as I feel like I'm talking about something right, I can talk about it. And the more I talk about it, the more I learn, because the way my brain works, I can't hold it in. I have to talk about it. Just like the other night when we saw that tilting at windmills, what did I have to do? I had to come home and
we told you about Don Quixote.
Yeah.
So you had to go
I had to go research it. I had to go find it, and then I had to type it out, and I had to do everything about it. And then once I started talking about it, I'm like, wow, this whole paragraph means something completely different to me when I was able to work it out.
And you'll read that paragraph in a year or 2 years from now, and you'll glean even more from
right.
it. And if you could see me, like when I get a call from one of my guys or whoever going through it, I grab the phone, I go out either the garage, and I start pacing because I think better on the move. No. It's kind of like Jerry Maguire looking for his bat.
Right.
I think better on the move. I think more clearly on the move.
Right.
I just do.
Yeah, so I think that gives a pretty good idea of where we're going with this podcast. And if you got any questions, and one of the things I didn't mention in the very beginning, and I apologize, we're learning how to get through this. If at any time you want to get a hold, if you think of somebody in your family, somebody of your concern, and you're wanting to get a hold of one of us, just email us. Our email is recoveryunfiltered, robnlarry@gmail.com. That's recoveryunfiltered, robnlarry@gmail.com. So let's go on a little bit about one of the other things I want to talk about. We're going to tell my story a little bit. We're going to walk through me and how I got to this sobriety, to this point in my sobriety. Today I've got a little over 2.5 years. And in that 2.5 years, it's been an elevator ride straight to the top for me. I've had some down days and I've had some not good days. But never, ever have I ever thought about in one of those days, should it be better if I was still drinking, right? Never in one of those days. When I checked into Maynard's on April 12th of 2022, it was the lowest point of my life. My ass was kicked. I didn't have anything left in me. I was supposed to be...
What a beautiful place to be.
It was.
But you don't know that at that time.
No. Watching my wife and daughters drive away that day, it was really the last place I wanted to be. I wanted to be in that car with them because I know the pain they were going through. And I apologize if I get emotional during this, but this is going to be a lot of this is going to be first for my family to hear. And it's still green to me. I mean, it's still wet. I mean, we're only talking, 2 years and a couple months. So
I hope that you never lose that.
You know what?
Listen, that's real. That's raw. And if that starts getting calloused,
right,
I'll open it back up for you.
That's the kind of friend you are.
That's right.
One of the encouraging things I saw here a few weeks back was at a speaker meeting. A guy had 30 some years sobriety. And even he still got emotional when he talked about his becoming and the things that are still happening in his life.
And here we go. That's the difference between a dream, that comes and goes, and a vision.
Right.
Those things stay with us because
right.
of the power.
Yeah. So, April 10th, I was supposed to be at a baseball game with for my grandson, and I had an appointment that morning, and I indulged a little bit more in my morning consumption, more than what I normally do. And I came home, and I decided I had had enough, and I was going to take a nap on the couch. And family was having a hard time. I was ignoring the phone calls coming in looking for me, and I didn't really care. I'd fallen asleep, and I was happy in my happy place. And that's because most of the time when I drink, that's where I was drinking to go to. I wasn't drinking to black out. I wasn't drinking to get drunk. I was drinking to put my brain to sleep. I was just wanting to just, it was an act of me just running away is what it was. And
from what?
From just reality, everything that was going on. I felt
just a slow, slow the mind down. And,
as Marty had always says that, that shitty committee between your head is the only thing, I had a lot of voices running around in there, a lot of shit telling me, this and that and this. And there's a lot of people dragging stuff. I was being pulled in many different directions, but it was also the hell I put myself in, right? I did it to myself, looking back, obviously I did a lot of it myself. So, April 10th it was a rough day. And then, so the family came home, and, they were all pretty upset with me. And, and I always had one guy that was always on my side. And when I called my other son-in-law and my other daughter, who was down in LA, who wasn't here, and my son-in-law wouldn't take my phone call, it was my moment of clarity. As strange as that seems, it's just weird. It's funny. And
what it takes.
I hate that my wife has to hear it put that way. But it was my moment of clarity when he wouldn't answer my phone call.
Your last advocate.
Right. My last.
Had enough of you.
Enough of me. And, and he had told me a few weeks prior to that, he'd already put up with one alcoholic. He wasn't going to see another one.
And that was his father about it.
Yeah. Yeah. So he, so when he said, he wouldn't take my phone call, I remember exactly where I was standing in the kitchen. I just set down the phone. I said, all right, call Maynard's. I'm ready. I didn't have any hesitation. That was literally my moment of clarity. And so they called, and they got a hold of somebody, and it was, and they told me that they couldn't get me in until Monday, which was going to be the 12th. But they also said, and to make sure my wife kept, remember this, it was funny.
I got told the same thing. I know you're what you're about to say because I've heard it, but I got told the same thing.
They said,
keep drinking.
Yeah, they said, don't stop doing what you're doing because it could be, dangerous. So I said, wait a minute, let's put that on speaker so everybody in the house can hear it. So, my wife let me have, we went to the store and we, got my alcohol for the day and for the 2 days actually. And April 12th at 2:36 a.m., I snuck out. It didn't sneak because I didn't have to at that point. I went out in the garage and grabbed my whiskey bottle from my toolbox that I'd been keeping there for whatever reason, and I finished.
It's a hell of a tool, buddy.
Yeah,
whiskey rich.
I drank that last drink at 2:36 a.m. on April 12th, and at 6 a.m. they took me up to Maynard. So, and it, what was funny is I said this before, and I thought after about 4 or 5 days there, I was like, sweet, I'm sober. I can do this now. I thought that was just, I thought that was the trick, right?
I didn't get away for a while, get your head clear.
Right.
Put the bottle down for a second or two and you're good.
No, I didn't realize.
Got this.
Yeah. I didn't realize they were going to be, digging into other parts of the solution, right? Or, let's get down to the problem.
No one had quoted to the top of page 64
right.
to you yet, have they?
No. So when they said, now that we got rid of the solution, now we're going to find the problem. I'm like, gosh, shit, what does that mean? And I'm like, the more I dug into it, the more, when they started telling me that, you have character flaws, I started portraying my character flaws. And that was my biggest problem there the first few days. Is I was
kind of touch on, because when you were there, kick up a few days where you were struggling because one of your main character defects is you are a control. And because I've sponsored a lot of men over a lot of years, and we all have our. But as far as it being someone who needs to be in control, a control freak, what we call them, you take the cake, Dad, and that kind of got you to a place where you were ready to go.
Yeah, I mean, I kept trying to tell them this and that. Well, you can't do that. Well, why is this person not doing that? And it was just, and they went. So I had a first meeting with the head counselor there, who was supposed to be my counselor, and she finally said, you know what, I'm going to put you with somebody else. I was mad because she wasn't dealing with me every day, right? She was calling everybody else out every day, but she wasn't calling me out every day.
Can you believe that? The nerve.
The bitch. And so then there was another lady there by the name of Shauna, and she would always ask me and talk to me. And I still say to this day, there's certain people that came into my life that God put in my life through
the right time,
through that 28-day period that absolutely changed the course of my life and changed the course. And Sean was one of them. And then when that one counselor, they put me in with another counselor, and that lasted one session, and I was literally talking over her, and I told her she don't know what she's talking about, blah, 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 on and on and on. And finally they called me back, and I kept calling it the principal's office. I had to go in the principal's office 3 times. So finally the last time was with the owner. Shauna was there, and I didn't know who that Shauna was. I hadn't met her. So she's sitting across the table, and and I finally had to go, excuse me, ma'am, can you introduce yourself? Because I know these people, but I don't know who you are. And when she introduced herself, I go, I apologize, ma'am, but just so you know, I don't like the way things are being ran around here. You know what I try to, now I got the owner's attention, right? So,
oh yeah.
And so that's when they told me that they're going to put me with another guy by the name of Chris. And I'm like, who's Chris? And they said,
who indeed?
Yeah. They said his last name. And I'm like, I don't even know who that is. And they said, well, you sit in his classroom every day. And I'm like, I didn't even know he's a counselor. I thought he was just a teacher.
And that's what they give the hard cases.
And that's what they said. They exactly said that. They said, we give the hard ones to Chris. And I'm like, wow, okay. So I met with him the very first time. And Rob, when I tell you that my world was turned upside down. Is this when he
had the stuff arranged?
The first time he didn't.
Okay.
The first time he didn't. I think the first time he had a good indication of just how fucked up I was in the brain. And we sat there and we chit-chatted for a little bit. And we chit-chatted now, mind you, I've only got 6 days left, 6 or 7 days left till my 28 days are up, right? I'd wasted all this time. And looking back on it now, I can tell you I had literally wasted what should have been just captive time for me to really reflect and work through stuff. And so Chris had a very short period of time with me, and the very next meeting was the next day, and he gave me a little bit of homework to do. And the next day I show up and I walk in. He's got a little bitty office out on the side of the classroom there, and we went over to the other side. And when I walked in, he had all the chairs turned around backwards and everything just everything out of array. And I'm like, and I just walk in and I start putting stuff back where it's supposed to be. And he goes, what are you doing? I said, I'm just putting the chairs back. He says, nobody told you to do that. And I go, they're just I was just doing it. He goes, nobody told you to do that. Sit down. And I'm like, excuse me? I mean, who the fuck are you?
Yeah. Don't you know who you're talking to?
Do you know who I am?
This is Larry.
And he goes, just sit down. So I sat down, and in my brain, I'm still looking at all this stuff that's all turned around and shit's backwards. And I'm like, and it's driving me nuts. And we just kept talking and kept talking. He goes, you got to let it go. That is none of your business over there. And it finally dawned on me. I'm like, that I'm a control fucking freak, arrogant ego, just
human.
Oh my God.
You're human.
My ego deflated in a matter of moments when I finally realized it, and I felt that trigger in my head go, fuck, I got some issues. Wow, he's right. This is none of my concern. There's nothing in this room that pertains to me. It's not my place.
It's far past the end of your nose.
It has nothing to do with me. I've been invited to sit in this man's room to help me become a better man, and here I am trying to fix his shit. that just goes in 100%.
Ignoring your broken shit.
Ignoring anything I got wrong with me.
I mean, but all of us in that position were in that position.
Right. So,
another moment of clarity.
Oh my gosh. And
I love that story because I know Chris.
Yeah. And so we're going to get to that. I mean, the whole thing, how it wraps back around. And then later on that day, I was laying, because by this time they had me in a private room, right? They didn't want me affecting the rest of the group. And so I'm laying in the room, and I did a lot of reading. And I was laying there, and I remember I was reading through the steps, and I remember looking at step 9. And Chris's office, not just Chris's office, but the counselor's office was right next to my room. And I knew Chris was in there, and I was reading step 9, and almost immediately I started thinking about people that I just shit on in my life, and people that I had stepped on or stepped over on my way up through the ranks of my businesses that I've been working with. And I'm just like, I walk next door and I open up the door. I go, man, I need to start making some phone calls. And Chris goes, you just need to pump the brakes.
You're not on that step yet.
You're not on that step yet. But I remembered that I was on a fast pace after that. I was literally on a fast pace. And Chris knew that. We only had the opportunity to meet one, maybe 2 more times after that.
And then he sent you on the after party down to...
Right. So then we're going to get into that in just a minute. But right now, we're going to do a little bit of something to lighten this up a little bit.
Oh, I know where we're going.
Let's talk about Drunk of the Week.
Drunk of the Week.
Drunk Florida man tries to use a taco as an ID after his car catches fire in a Taco Bell.
A taco.
Tacos are not recognized as legal forms of identification in Florida. Did you know that?
I did not know that. How about California?
I'm pretty sure you can pretty much use anything in California for legal.
Okay.
A guy by the name of Matthew Faulkner found out the hard way.
Mother Faulkner. Taco boy.
Found out the hard way after he passed out drunk in the drive-thru of a Jensen Beach Taco Bell and his car caught fire.
See, how did his car catch fire?
Well, we're going to get to that.
Okay.
Pump the brakes, mister. Faulkner had apparently decided to make a run for the 4th meal after downing some beers, and he somehow made it all the way to a fast food joint in his Chevy pickup. Did you enjoy that 4th meal?
I have no idea.
You never, after drinking and stuff, you never went out chasing Jack? Mine was Jack in the Box.
The tacos. You
right.
get 99-cent tacos?
Oh,
absolutely.
My God, I used to destroy those things.
I haven't had those in years. But yeah.
Well, 13 to be exact.
A little over, yeah.
The Taco Bell manager had to call the police for Faulkner was out cold in the parking and in the pickup window and holding up to customers. A deputy awoke Faulkner and then asked for his ID. Faulkner said no before reaching into his bag and presenting the officer with a taco.
So he tried to bribe his way out of it.
Right. Another deputy clarified that they were asking for an ID, not a taco. Faulkner chuckled and began to eat the taco. Wow. The deputies noticed Faulkner had fallen asleep with his foot on the accelerator and the truck caught fire. The engine...
There we go.
There you go. They used fire extinguishers to put it out. Faulkner's blood alcohol content was 0.227 and 225, according to a breath test.
I've had that. Grief. So he was hammered.
Oh, my God. Good.
So he pulled up, he getting his food, put her in park, passed out, foot hit the skinny pedal, and just... Wow.
Oh, my God. Anyways, that's Drunk of the Week.
Matthew.
So back to so day 28, I got out. You know, one of the biggest things for me, and this is where it's going to get, hopefully not to get emotional on this one, but, you know, watching people leave up there was sad because there were so many people that had to get picked up by taxis. A lot of the union guys were picking them up. It wasn't even family that was picking their people up. And, you know, one of the people that I always looked up to was my big brother. I mean, I always looked up to him. And I knew my wife would be there. Pretty sure my sister was going to be there because they kind of told me I was talking to them. But when I walked out, my brother was there. And I knew I was going to be okay.
You know we're going to touch on that, where you might as well let it go.
Yeah. So
why did you think that? I mean, because a big brother, depending on age, and listen, growing up in the next town.
It's okay. We'll cut it.
Anyway, but what I want to know is, Why did you know you were going to be okay?
My dad
Would you have the same? It's the same. Would you have the same reaction with your father?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. My father or my brother, those were the men in my life growing up. My brother, my mom and dad divorced when I was fairly young. My brother was in his 16s, right? And in his higher teens. So he was running. He was gone all the time.
The age difference is what?
We're 4 years apart. But that's a lot. That's a lot in your teenage years, right?
Oh, yeah.
Big. And he, and my dad was obviously around. I mean, but I had moved a lot between my mom and my dad. I moved around a lot growing up. I wasn't real happy here. I wasn't happy there. I wasn't happy anywhere, right? Because to me, my parents should have been together. But I mean, that's neither here nor there. But so I always looked up to my big brother because I always wanted to be like him, right? When I went into high school, I was, you're so-and-so's little brother. Yep. And well, shit, I just always wanted to be like my big brother. We worked together afterwards, and a lot of my work ethic comes from him and my dad and my grandpa.
So you step out of Maynard's to go home, and there's brother.
There's my big brother.
What's the first thing he says to you?
I don't even remember.
I
don't. Yeah, I don't. I remember. I'm sure it was Bud because he always calls me Bud, or Booger. So it's something. I mean, I don't. I just remember seeing him and my sister and my wife and those, and I knew I was going to be okay. Cause I was worried cause they talk about getting out and going into the real world. Right.
Because let's be honest. Once you leave that place, that's when the work starts.
Right. 100%. I mean, you got sober in there, right? I got sober, and that's what was the key to it is I got sober. But the work was just beginning because obviously my time with Chris just literally kicked the dust off the rock that still had to be turned over and cleaned up, right? I still had to deal
with the isms.
Oh my gosh, I still had a lot to go, and remember. So Chris got me involved with Jay at the local meeting down here in town in the valley. And when we left up there, my wife and I left, I went directly to, I'll never forget this. I went to Staples. I picked up notebooks. I picked up highlighters. I picked up pens, and my wife had already
Why doesn't that surprise me?
And my wife had already bought me I bought a big book with bold print, and because the little books that you get there, they're just too damn hard to read. So
that's mine. Yeah,
I can't read that little shit. And so I'd already started highlighting and working in that. And so my wife and I got home, and at 6 o'clock, I went straight to the meeting. I didn't even hesitate, man. I told you when that switch flipped, I wanted to go. I wanted to learn more. I wanted more. And so I went in that night, and I went and met Jay, and I just remember being so closed off. I was just very closed and didn't want anybody even touching me, talking to me. I didn't want anything. I wanted to sit and listen and take notes. That's all I wanted. And I walked in there, and everybody just hugs and just welcome. And oh my gosh, it was like I'd walked into an old family, right? I walked in, and I was just so happy to be there. And then, leaving there, I remember leaving there, and after talking to Jay and
leaving the meeting,
the meeting, right? Sorry, I kind of got blanked there for a second.
Leaving the meeting, track, Daddy.
Leaving that meeting, I remember driving home, going, "Wow, this is I'm sitting in a room with 40 some years of sobriety, and 30 years, and 15 years, and 20 years, and I remember reality kind of hit and going, fuck, that's the rest of my life, right?"
Could be.
I mean, I started putting that into perspective a little bit and going, shit, I got to figure this out. So I remember calling Jay later that night and going, okay, I need to get started. And so we set up a meeting, and actually I did it through his wife. And so we started, and it just wasn't moving fast enough for me. I needed speed, right? I needed to go faster and faster and faster. I remember by about the third or fourth meeting I set up with Jay, I think Jay finally realized that I was going faster than what he was wanting to go at that point. So he introduced me to you. I'll never forget that. That was I remember when you walked into the room that night. I
have a commanding presence. Don't kid yourself.
All 4'2" of you. And when you walked into that room, I can remember you walking in with such positivity, and I can remember just telling myself, I want what he's got. I don't know how he got it, but I want to know. I want what he's got. He walked in, and he's just his aurora, just everything about him is a light. About you was just light, and I just wanted that. And then we went through the meeting, and I remember listening to you share and thinking, I'm going to have to introduce myself to this guy. I want to know more about him. And then lo and behold, here comes Jay coming over and to introduce us together, And at that point, I didn't know how to, and I knew I wanted you to walk me through these steps, and I knew I wanted you to take me through this, and I knew I wanted to be at your pace.
And what Larry didn't know at this time, this had been, I hadn't been to my home group for a minute. I've been spending time in my hometown. My home group's in the next town over, no big deal. And so I showed up just to see my people. And Jay is my sponsor. Jay is the one that helped save my life. So he walked up, turned around and said, Larry, have you met Rob? Larry turns around. I didn't know all this that was going on in Larry's head. Shook his hand. And then at that point, Jay turned around, and Jay is 85 years old. And by the time me and Larry shaking hands, Jay's in a full sprint going the other way saying, he's your problem. You got it.
Yeah, so for me, I didn't know. I felt like it was a breakup. I didn't know how to leave one sponsor to go to another, and
that's one thing we're going to solve, or one question.
Sure.
These, will you answer?
Oh, we're going to talk a lot about this going through this.
Because a lot of people have that problem, and you don't need to have that problem.
Not at all. I mean, that's definitely something we're going to touch on. And I walked outside and I said, hey, I really have been with Jay, and to Rob, and I said, I've been with Jay, and I feel like I want you to sponsor me, and I want you to walk me through the steps. And you gave me four rules.
You said, but I don't know how to tell Jay that.
Yeah, I did. I said, I don't know how to tell Jay. And you said, don't worry, he'll figure it out.
Yeah, he'll figure it out.
And he did, and I never really said, hey, but Jay is still my grand sponsor. I guess that's what you call it. And Rob's my sponsor. Chris, who now is, because of the statute of limitation from me being at Maynard's, I'm able to sit with Chris, and Chris is going to eventually be on the...
by the way, Jay is also Chris's sponsor.
Yes.
Chris is coming up on 20 years.
Yep.
And when we get to my story, you'll see another correlation of how God works in our life, and maybe your life, we hope.
Yeah. So, where was I at?
Talking about Jay and Chris, and about how many sponsors you got, because it takes that many people.
Right.
It takes a village to raise a Larry.
Yeah. So, and then when I finally asked Rob to sponsor me, Rob had 4 rules. What was them rules, Rob?
Rule number 1, you don't lie to me, and I don't lie to you. Rule number 2, what you say to me and what I say to you stays between you, me, and God. It ain't my wife's effing business. It isn't your wife's effing business. That's where it must stay. Rule number 3, I'm sorry. If at any time you want to go a different direction, grow. I'm just here to help. You will not hurt my feelings. And rule number 4, the 3 gifts God has given me is my time, my talent, my treasure. The most valuable thing I possess is my time. Don't waste my fucking time.
Right.
And if you break any of those, I don't care who you are. Go find somebody else. Because, like I said, there's someone wanting that seat.
Right.
God's got someone waiting for that seat, and I'm ready to go. And when we hit it hard and fast, just like the old timers did. We move through this. We get some recovery now.
Did I ever waste your time?
Not a bit. Not a bit.
Was I on fire?
On fire. I mean, that's what you love. That's what.
Right.
That's the gift.
Right.
Because the gift is not. I mean, God is the power.
Right.
Here is a process. Right. But to watch a man be reunited with his family, become a husband again, maybe for the first time, or just that light, and the children, everything kind of blossoms up. When that happens, that magic happens. I look goosebumps.
Right.
That's what I've been looking for.
Right. And when I see it, I not only have I felt it with the living amends that I've done with my wife and with my daughters and with my son-in-laws, those living amends that I see grow stronger and stronger every day. The closer I grow to both my daughters, the more, I got to walk my daughter down the aisle.
I got to be there.
Yes, you did. You and some of our other friends, and it was, I got to do it. Right. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I would have had that privilege to do it, or been in the capacity to do it. I've got to watch the birth of a 3rd grandchild and be there. Not only physically, but mentally be there.
Emotionally and spiritually be there in a way that you've never...
Right. My other 2 grandchildren, I was there, But mentally, I was thinking about where that next drink was going to come in and when we can move and blah, blah, blah. And, working that whole how's the alcoholic brain. So, and I'm able to be a part of, God, the incredible things. And when we walked through those steps and 1 and 2 and 3, and when we got to 4, and I got to talk about this a little bit prior to on another podcast I was on, that when you started walking through that 4th step and you hear other people talk about it, how they say that when you start walking through that and you feel yourself getting lighter and lighter and lighter, I didn't realize how much truth is to that until I actually started doing it, right? And the more I walked through those steps and the more I did step 8 and step 9 and just the load that came off of me. And then I got the opportunity about 3 months after my sobriety, and for 3 months after I was out, I was still at my other job. I went back to work at the same place I was at, and I was running a company. I was a general manager. I only answered to the owners. It's the only thing I answered to, and they, and I pretty much had the run of things, and I just was getting treated a little bit differently. I wasn't happy. I just wasn't comfortable in that same position.
It was time to move on.
It was time. God was pushing me.
That's the spirit. The spirit says it's time to move.
Yeah, God was just pushing me, and I believe God was pushing me not to even go back there to begin with. I mean, this place just mentally was not healthy for me to be at. And I said a couple things to a couple people, and the one of the things I forgot to mention in the very beginning, and I'm sorry to go back, is the day I got out of Maynard's and my wife had picked me up. I'd gone down the road about 1.5 miles from Maynard's, and I get a phone call on my cell phone from a lady that I haven't spoken to in probably close to a year, and we worked together for 13 years at another place. We've been together probably 14, 16 years that that we know each other. And she calls up just to ask me how I'm doing. And I'm like, are you seriously calling me right now just to ask me how I'm doing? Nothing else. You don't know anything else about my life. She's like, no, not at all.
Just called to check on you.
Just called to check on me.
That's a friend.
And I go, you have no idea. She's like, no. I go, literally, Casey, I was just picked up out of Maynard's, out of a rehab. I just got out of rehab. And she goes, what? And I go, yeah, Katie literally just picked me up less than 10 minutes ago. And so we talked about that for a little bit. And her dad was 20-some years into the program, one of us. And he had passed away. And, we talked about that a lot. And so she kept in touch with me quite a bit. And when I was really starting to struggle in my other job, she called me and she says, hey, you need to call and talk to so-and-so. And I'm really trying to be careful with names here. And I said, I don't know. I got a meeting with another company. I'm going to meet with them and see what happens. And it was just a flop. And when I went over there, I had a meeting. I didn't hear anything for a couple weeks. And
now, what you guys don't know, in these couple weeks, I'm getting a call from Larry every day.
Right.
Because he's not in control. Oh. He has to wait patiently on other people, God, timing, which is a lesson for him to learn, which was a good lesson for him to learn.
Driving me nuts.
But 2 weeks in Larry's time is like dog years.
Right.
It's like 7 years in other people's time. He's just nuts.
But I patiently waited for that other company to call, and they never called me. So finally, I called them.
You waited. Patiently is bullshit.
Fuck off. And then so I finally called them, and I'm like, dude, what's the deal here? And they act like they didn't even know who the hell I was. And I'm like, are you kidding me right now? And the problem was, I'm good friends with the owner. I could have just called the owner and talked to the owner, but I didn't. I was trying to do it the right way. And finally, I got frustrated, and the other lady called me up, says, how's it going? And I'm like, God, I'm just frustrated. She goes, you need to call. And I go, okay. So I hung up, and I called so-and-so, and he's like, hey, where you been? And I'm like, I've been right here. He's like, when can you get in here? And I'm like, I guess tomorrow. So we went in there, and from the day that to the day I went to work where I'm currently at was less than 2 weeks. And this guy, he didn't know what he was going to do with me. He just knew that he wasn't going to let me go somewhere else. And I had a little bit of ego left, and this guy has been a huge impact in my life. And he's not even one of us, right? He's not. He doesn't even know the program. He knew me, and he knew my character flaw, and he was going to break it. He didn't care because he knew that was one thing in me that I had still that was making me a valuable piece of a puzzle for his organization that he needed me to fit into. And for about 2 to 3 months, I just kept fighting it. And I was still trying to pull that old ego thing in. And finally he just called me up one day and he says, this ain't going to work unless this gets fixed. And I had to take a real hard look, and I'm like, he's going to break the last ounce of ego I got left. Hopefully. He did.
He was a lot of help.
He
if I ever meet the man, I'm going to shake his hand, give him a hug, maybe a kiss on the cheek, because he was a help.
He did.
Of getting rid of some of these isms. Now, these isms never fully go away.
No.
But as we stay spiritually fit,
right,
they're dampened. They're not as sharp.
Yeah. So
he was instrumental in helping,
right,
whether he knows it or not.
And that was the last part. Now, the thing about it, Rob, is I'm very comfortable in my skin now. I don't need title. I don't need, in fact, I got asked to go back to coach this year, and I'm coaching at the freshman level. When I was coaching before, I was coaching the varsity level. I was a head coach at the varsity level. I wanted that title. I wanted that name. I wanted that ego, chest bowed out, shoulders up. I didn't know how to fucking clue what I was doing. I was bulldozing my way through it and acting like I knew what I was doing. But I was in a position I had no. I got asked to coach back this year, and I'm coaching at the freshman level. I'm running the defense, and I'm
Perfect.
loving life,
because
life.
Your motives are in tune.
I want to help. That's all I want to do. I want to help. I want to be a part of the solution, not a problem. And where I was at before, because of my hard-headedness, I was just being a part of the problem. But I was so hard-headed and pushed so hard at everything I was doing. My hard-headedness is what got me through in life. It's what pushed me through. And now that recognition of that stuff is, I don't want anything to do with it. I don't. Let me be a soldier in the background. I don't want to be in that front line. I'll go on that front line, but I don't want the recognition. I want to teach other people to do that. I don't want to be that. I want to be a teacher. I want to be a leader in that way. I want people to follow and do it. Well, I'm saying that wrong. I want to help people by giving them the knowledge that I have. Tools that I have. Tools that I've used in the years. I've been doing this thing in my industry for 32 years. I started as a truck driver in 1992 as a truck driver, and I worked my way up through the ranks, a lot of it using my hard-headedness, my selfishness, and my character flaws that I had, pushing my way through, pushing my way up. But even
our book talks about, we are generally, I'm not one of them, you are one of them, and most of our brothers are high-functioning
Very
people.
high, yeah.
And once they get sober, wow, they really climb. I'm not one. I'm dumber than duck shit. But
no, I'm
an outlier.
God used you another way.
Yeah.
So I don't. So I'm happy being where I'm at right now. Once I work my way up through the ranks.
What you said, let's go back to comfortable in your own skin, because that's the goal of everybody.
Right.
And that's something that when I look back, back, if you want to just measure lives, I had blessed, still hardships, but we'll get more to my story, but that is a crux with anybody could use that. Who doesn't want to be comfortable in their own skin in any given situation?
I don't, and like I was saying a while back, when I was saying something a while back, I was saying that I was talking to somebody, is that now when I feel that anxiety starting to come up and I feel something's not right. Inside me, right? We talk about that in our 10th step when I lay my head down at nighttime, right? And I ask
11 steps when you lay your head down.
Yeah, sorry. But I do that every day, and when I wake up, I say my prayers and I ask for the help. But when I feel something not right inside, I've either upset somebody, I've left something undone, I've said something wrong, or I've done something that
I'm afraid I'm not going to get something that I want,
right?
Or something's going to get taken from me that I don't want to get rid of.
Right.
It's a rejection, abandonment. But it's inside.
Right.
It's nothing wrong outside. Every time I'm uncomfortable, I got to figure out what's in me that's not accepting
Right.
the situation as it is.
So that's how that's how we live. And we're going to go through this more and more. We touched on me. We got to know me a little bit. We're going to come back next week and we're going to touch on Rob a little bit. You going to be okay with that?
Oh, I'm good. Just don't touch physically. Keep your hands off.
Well, we won't do that on here. Hey, thanks for joining us today. We are going to be signing off for now. My name is Larry.
My name is Rob.
This has been Recovery Unfiltered. If you want to reach out to us, you can reach us at recoveryunfiltered, Rob and Larry @gmail.com.
That's Rob, R-O-B-N, the letter N, Larry, not Rob and Larry.
That is correct. And
Just
it's
for clarification.
@gmail.com. Thank you for joining us today.
We hope you learned something today that will help you.
If you did not, come back next week and we'll try again.
If you like what we heard, give us a 5-star review. If you don't like what you heard, kiss my... You can't say that, can you? Anyway, if you don't like what you heard, go ahead and tell us that too. We'll see what we can improve. We probably won't change nothing, but do it anyway.
Hey, thanks, Rob. Come back next week and hopefully something will be different and something will sink in. Take care.
This has been Recovery Unfiltered.